The holographic display dominated the central plaza of HUD Station Omega, broadcasting to 3 billion viewers across 40 systems. Vexlara, host of the galaxy's most-watched survival program Last One Breathing, spread her forearms dramatically as the camera drones circled her. Citizens of the Galactic Network. Her voice resonated through translation implants in 1,000 languages. Today, we present the ultimate challenge. A test so dangerous, so absolutely lethal, that our legal department required 17 new liability waivers just to announce it. The display shifted to show a planet that looked like someone had taken all of nature's worst ideas and combined them into one spinning ball of hatred. Purple lightning cracked through toxic green clouds. The oceans appeared to be boiling. The land masses were covered in vegetation that seemed to be actively reaching for things to strangle. Tarthos 7, Vexlara continued, her scales shifting to a dramatic crimson. Classification, Death World Class 12. Atmospheric Toxicity Index, fatal. Predator density, apocalyptic. Survival rate of previous expeditions, 0.0%. Not a single being has lasted more than 6 hours on this nightmare sphere. The crowd murmured nervously. Class 12 was theoretical. Nothing actually survived on Class 12 worlds except bacteria and regret. Our contestants today are the finest survival experts the galaxy can offer, Vexlara announced as the first competitor materialized on stage via teleport. First, we have Korthax the Undying, a Krellian warrior who survived 30 days in the void wastes with nothing but his exoskeleton. Korthax was massive, 8 feet of armored carapace and muscle, with mandibles that could crush titanium. He looked appropriately intimidating. Second, Lyssa Moonwhisper, an ethereal who can exist in partial energy form, making her resistant to physical damage and environmental hazards. Lyssa floated onto stage, her translucent form shimmering with air light. She'd survived the radiation fields of Xanath by simply dispersing her molecules. Impressive credentials. And third, we have... Vexlara paused, consulting her datapad with visible confusion. Marcus Webb, human from Earth, a thoroughly ordinary-looking man, walked onto stage wearing hiking boots, faded jeans, and a flannel shirt that had seen better days. He was maybe 5'10", slightly built, with the kind of face that suggested he worked in an office and considered going to the gym but never actually did. Hi, Marcus waved awkwardly at the crowd. Quick question, is there prize money? Because I really just came here looking for the bathroom, and your assistant said if I sign this form, I could win enough credits to pay off my mortgage. Vexlara's scales flickered with uncertainty. You understand this is a survival challenge on the most dangerous planet in known space? Yeah, the lady explained. Sounds rough, but honestly, how bad can it be? I camp like 6 times a year, been doing it since I was a kid. Marcus shrugged. Worst case, I tap out early and grab lunch somewhere. You guys have food courts here? The audience laughed, assuming the human was joking. Korthax looked at Marcus with what might have been pity. Lyssa's ethereal form pulsed with sympathetic colors. Very well, Vexlara said, deciding to lean into the absurdity. Contestants, you will be dropped on Tarthos 7 with 0 equipment, 0 supplies, and 0 support. You have to survive 72 hours. The first to signal for extraction loses. The last one standing wins 50,000 galactic credits and eternal glory. 50,000? Marcus perked up. That'd cover the mortgage and the car payment. Okay, I'm in. The drop pod screamed through Tarthos 7's atmosphere, like a meteor with a death wish. Inside, 3 contestants gripped their harnesses, while Vexlara's voice provided cheerful commentary through the speakers. Current surface temperature, 140 degrees Fahrenheit in the shade, she announced. Atmospheric composition, 20% oxygen, 75% nitrogen, 5% sulfur compounds that will burn your lungs if you breathe too deeply. Local predator count, estimated at 14 species that consider anything carbon-based to be food. Korthax's mandibles clicked nervously. Lyssa had dimmed her glow to conserve energy. Marcus was looking out the window like a tourist on a sightseeing flight. Huh, Marcus said. Looks kind of like Death Valley. I camped there once in July. Brutal heat, but you just need water and shade. Is there water down there? There are water sources, Vexlara confirmed. but they're contaminated with parasites that will lay eggs in your organs. So boil it first. Got it. Marcus nodded, like she just told him the soup of the day. The pod hit the ground with bone-rattling force. The doors blew open with a hiss of hydraulics, and suddenly they were breathing Tarthos 7's air, which smelled like rotten eggs mixed with burning rubber and regret. Korthax immediately activated his combat protocols, his exoskeleton plates shifting into defensive positions. Lissa dispersed partially, becoming harder to target. Marcus stepped out, seized, and looked around with the practiced eye of someone evaluating a campsite. Okay, first things first, Marcus announced to nobody in particular. I need to find water, build shelter, and get a fire going before nightfall. Sun's at about 2 o'clock position, so I've got maybe 6 hours of daylight. Not great, but workable. The human is conducting a tactical assessment, Vexlara narrated to the viewing audience, though his methods seem informal. Marcus was already walking toward a cluster of rocks, examining the vegetation and picking up sticks. He found a fallen branch, tested its weight, and nodded in satisfaction. This'll work for a walking stick. Help from stability, and you can use it to test ground before you step. Also good for whacking things if they get aggressive. He demonstrated by poking the ground ahead of him. See? Solid here, but soft there. Probably mud or quicksand. Don't step there. Korthax and Lissa were still standing at the drop pod, trying to formulate a survival strategy. Marcus was already 50 yards away, gathering materials. The first night, by the time the sun started setting, which on Tarthos 7 happened with the speed and subtlety of someone switching off a light, Marcus had accomplished what the monitoring team called statistically impossible. He'd built a shelter using fallen branches and broad leaves from plants that were supposed to be toxic to touch. Except Marcus had noticed they only secreted poison when threatened, so he'd approached them calmly and taken only dead leaves. The shelter was angled to block the prevailing wind, elevated slightly to avoid ground moisture, and positioned near, but not too near, a water source. The water source was a stream that, according to scans, was teeming with parasites. Marcus had built a fire using friction and dry moss, then boiled water in a container he'd woven from plant fibers in about 20 minutes. How did you know those plants were safe to use? Lissa asked, hovering nearby. She and Korthax had eventually gravitated toward Marcus's camp when they realized the human somehow wasn't dead. I didn't really, Marcus admitted, feeding more wood into the fire. But they look similar to palm fronds back home. Same structure, same growing pattern. Figure if they're toxic, it's probably contact poison on the living leaves, not the dead ones. Basic botany. Basic botany, Korthax repeated slowly. You gambled your life on basic botany. I mean, I tested it on a small area of skin first. Marcus showed them his forearm, which was completely fine. No reaction after 10 minutes meant probably okay. That's just common sense. The fire crackled cheerfully, completely ignoring the fact that it existed on a planet classified as uninhabitable. Marcus had even started roasting something that looked disturbingly like a grub he'd found under a log. Are you eating that? Lissa's voice carried notes of horror that transcended species barriers. Protein is protein, Marcus said, turning the grub on a stick. Looks like the witchetty grubs I had in Australia. Aboriginal people have eaten them for thousands of years. If it's safe for them, similar biochemistry means it's probably safe for me. Plus, cooking kills most harmful bacteria. He took a bite, chewed thoughtfully, and swallowed. Little nutty, not bad actually. 7 out of 10. Want some? Both aliens declined with emphatic gestures. As darkness fell completely, the sounds of Tarthos 7's nocturnal ecosystem ramped up. Things howled in the distance. Something large crashed through the underbrush nearby. Bioluminescent eyes appeared and disappeared at the edge of the firelight. Korthax was in full defensive mode, weapons ready. Lissa had dispersed to the point of near invisibility. Marcus added more wood to the fire and started humming something that sounded like classic rock. Aren't you afraid? Lissa asked finally. Marcus looked up, genuinely confused. Of what? The animals? Nah, fire keeps most predators away. It's instinct. They know fire means danger, even if they've never seen it before. Plus, we're not acting like prey. predators want easy meals. We're too much trouble. As if to prove his point, something massive prowled at the edge of the darkness, its eyes reflecting the firelight. Marcus picked up a rock and threw it accurately at a tree near the creature. A sharp crack of stone on wood made the predator start and retreat. See? Not worth it. We're loud, we throw things, we have fire. From its perspective, we're dangerous, weird things to avoid. Marcus settled back against the log he'd positioned as a backrest. This is actually pretty nice. No cell service, no emails, no Karen from accounting. Just nature and problem solving. This is literally what I do for vacation. Across the galaxy, 3 billion viewers sat in stunned silence as a human treated certain death as a relaxing weekend getaway. And somewhere in the broadcast booth, Vexletta was frantically searching for information about Earth, discovering to her absolute horror that it was classified as Class 11. The human was camping on a Class 12 death world because he'd evolved on something almost as bad. We've made a terrible mistake, Vexletta whispered to her producer. But the ratings were already breaking records, so they kept filming. Marcus woke up at dawn with the cheerful energy of someone who'd had a good night's sleep in a comfortable bed, despite the fact that he'd slept on a death world that actively hated biological life. Morning, he called out to Korthax and Lissa, who had spent the night in states of high alert and existential dread, respectively. Sleep okay? I did not sleep, Korthax rumbled. I maintained defensive vigilance against the 17 separate predator species that approached our camp. Oh yeah, I heard them, Marcus said, stretching. But they all backed off when I hit the perimeter, right? That's because I spread some of the ash from the fire mixed with urine around the camp. Confuses their scent tracking and marks territory. Most animals respect that. You urinated for tactical purposes, Lissa said faintly. Multitasking, Marcus grinned. Okay, today's agenda: improve shelter, set up water purification system, maybe try to catch some fish if that stream has them, and scout the area for better resources. Who wants to help? What followed was perhaps the most surreal day in broadcast survival television history. Marcus taught Korthax how to weave structural supports using a basic over-under pattern, which the massive warrior took to with surprising enthusiasm. He showed Lissa how to identify edible plants by looking for specific signs, parallel veins, certain stem structures, and growth patterns that suggested they were similar to Earth vegetation. I'm not saying these are definitely safe, Marcus explained, showing them a plant with broad leaves and purple berries. But look, birds have been eating these berries. Their digestive systems are different from ours. But if something is toxic enough to kill us, it usually shows warning signs. Bright colors can mean poison, but these are dark purple, which suggests anthocyanins, which are usually safe, so probably okay in small amounts. He ate one berry, waited 20 minutes while working on other tasks, then ate a few more when no illus eggs appeared. The human is conducting real-time toxicology experiments on himself, Vexletta narrated in a voice that suggested she'd given up understanding anything. This should got work. This violates 17 known principles of xenobiology, and yet he's fine. By midday, Marcus had constructed what could only be described as a legitimate base camp. There was a main shelter reinforced with a woven roof that shed water, a separate cooking area with a fire pit and rocks arranged for heat reflection, a food storage area elevated off the ground to prevent scavengers, and a water purification system that involved boiling, filtering through sand and charcoal, and letting it sit in sunlight. This is better than my apartment, Korthax observed, genuinely impressed. And I pay 1,500 credits a month for that. Rent is theft, Marcus agreed. This is free, and honestly, kind of therapeutic, very grounding. Gets you back to basics. The Predator incident. That's when the Razorwing attacked. Razorwings were Tarthos 7's apex aerial predator, 30-foot wingspan, talons that could punch through steel, and a hunting strategy that involved dropping from altitude at speeds exceeding 100 miles per hour. They had a kill success rate of 98%. This particular Razorwing had him circling the camp for an hour, waiting for an opening. When Marcus stepped away from the fire to gather more wood, it struck. The diving attack was textbook perfect, silent, fast, and absolutely lethal. Except Marcus heard something. Maybe the displacement of air, maybe some instinct honed by thousands of years of human evolution, and turned at the last second. Instead of talons meeting flesh, they met the thick branch Marcus had been carrying. He'd raised it instinctively, and the Razorwing's momentum carried it into the wood with a crack that echoed across the clearing.
The creature shrieked in pain and confusion. Marcus, running on pure adrenaline and apparently zero self-preservation instinct, didn't run. He stood his ground, held the branch like a baseball bat, and yelled at the top of his lungs, "Get out of here! Go! Not today, buddy!" The razorwing, apex predator of an entire planet, hesitated. Nothing had ever fought back before. Nothing had ever yelled at it. And this small, soft creature was making itself bigger, louder, and brandishing a weapon. Marcus took a step forward, still yelling, "I said go! Shoo! Beat it!" The razorwing made a confused chirping sound, flat its massive wings, and flew away. Marcus stood there for a moment, breathing hard, then looked at the branch in his hands. "Huh, that actually worked. Cool."
He walked back to camp like nothing had happened. Across the galaxy, viewer numbers had jumped to 5 billion. Emergency xenopsychology councils were convening. Military strategists were taking notes. Did the human just Vexlara started then stopped? Did he just verbally assert dominance over a razorwing? The same strategy works on bears, Marcus explained later when asked. You make yourself big, make noise, show you're not prey. Most predators want easy meals. If you fight back, you're not easy. They'll usually pick something else. Usually. I wouldn't try it on a crocodile or a hippo. They don't care about your feelings. The storm. On day 3, Tarthos 7's weather decided to remind everyone why it was a Class 12 death world. The storm rolled in with the speed and anger of a natural disaster that had personal grievances. The monitoring station sent an emergency broadcast. Category 10 environmental event approaching. All contestants a signal for immediate extraction. This is not optional. Survival probability during the storm, 0%. Korthek signaled immediately. Lissa followed shortly after. Both were proud survivors, but they weren't stupid. Marcus looked at the incoming storm clouds, looked at his shelter, and made some quick calculations. Marcus Webb, human, you must signal for extraction. Vexlar's voice crackled through the emergency broadcast. This storm will kill you. Yeah, probably, Marcus admitted. But I've got maybe 30 minutes before it hits. That's enough time to reinforce the shelter and secure everything. I've weathered bad storms before. There was this hurricane in Florida once. This is not a hurricane. This is a planetary-scale disaster event. Right. So I should probably get moving then. What followed was 30 minutes of the most intense preparation the galaxy ever witnessed. Marcus moved with practiced efficiency, reinforcing his shelter with additional layers, digging drainage trenches, securing everything that could become a projectile, and creating a sealed interchamber using woven materials and natural waterproofing from tree resin. He gathered extra firewood and stored it in a dry area. He filled every container with water. He even brought in some of the edible plants he'd identified, creating an emergency food supply. When the storm hit, it hit like the wrath of an angry god. Winds exceeding 200 miles per hour. Rain that fell horizontally. Lightning that struck the ground every few seconds. The temperature dropped 40 degrees in 10 minutes. The extraction team hovering in orbit watched the shelter on their monitors, expecting it to disintegrate any second. It held. Inside, Marcus had built a fire in a ventilated pit that somehow stayed lit. He'd created a windbreak using the natural terrain and his shelter design. And he was sitting there, warm and dry, eating roasted grubs and berries, while outside, the planet screamed its fury. This is actually kind of cozy, Marcus said to the camera drone that had taken shelter with him. Reminds me of camping in Washington State. Rain for days, but if you build right, you stay dry. The sound is actually pretty relaxing. White noise, you know? The storm raged for 6 hours. When it finally passed, the landscape had been completely transformed. Trees were down everywhere. The ground was scoured. Nothing could have survived outside shelter. Marcus emerged, surveyed the damage, and started cleaning up. Bit messy, but the shelter held up great. I should probably rebuild the fire pit. That got wrecked. And I'll need to find new water sources, since the stream changed course. But overall, not bad. Definitely worse than the time I camped during that thunderstorm in Colorado, but better than the hailstorm in Nebraska. That was biblical. The extraction ship arrived 12 hours early, not because Marcus signaled, but because the production company's insurance provider had threatened to cancel their policy if they made him say the full 72 hours.
Marcus packed up his cab with the meticulous care of someone who'd been taught to leave no trace, completely ignoring the fact that it was a death world and nobody cared about environmental impact. "You always clean up your campsite," he explained to the confused extraction team. "That's just good camping ethics. Leave it better than you found it." The ship's captain, a grizzled veteran who'd seen everything, stared at the human who'd just survived 3 days on Tarthos 7. How was all she managed. "Lots of practice," Marcus said. "And honestly, it wasn't that bad. The wildlife was aggressive, sure, but manageable. The storm was rough, but I've been through worse."
And the heat was uncomfortable, but I've camped in Death Valley in July. This was like that, but with better scenery. Your planet, the captain said slowly. Where you learned these skills? What's it classified as? Earth? I don't know. It's home. We've got some rough spots, but also some really beautiful places. Mountains, beaches, forests. I try to get out camping at least once a month. It's good for mental health. The captain pulled up Earth's classification on her data pad, showed it to Marcus, and watched his reaction. Class 11? Marcus read. Huh, that seems a bit dramatic. I mean, yeah, we've got some dangerous animals and weather, but once you know what to look for, it's fine. Most people live their whole lives without encountering anything truly dangerous. Unless you go looking for it, which I do, because camping is fun. The captain made a note to retire early. The aftermath. The interview broadcast reached every planet in space. Marcus sat in the studio, still wearing his camping clothes, while Vexlara tried to understand what had happened. Marcus Webb, you just survived the unsurvivable using what you call basic camping skills. How did humanity develop these abilities? Well, humans have been camping for like 200,000 years. It's how we lived before we invented houses. We are persistence hunters, so we had to follow prey for days, which make camping in different environments. We learned what worked and what didn't, and passed that knowledge down. Then we invented civilization and got soft. So now we camp for fun to remember our roots. You camp for fun? On a Class 11 death world? For fun? Yeah, it's relaxing. Gets you away from screens and stress. Plus, there's something satisfying about solving problems with just your hands and brain. Very primal. Earth has bears, you mentioned, and wolves, and sharks, and hurricanes. Oh yeah, tons of stuff that can kill you. But that's true everywhere, right? You just have to be aware and prepared. Most accidents happen because people are careless or uninformed. Education and experience solve that. And you learned all this from your uncle? Uncle Mike. Yeah, he's big into wilderness survival. Bit of a hippie, honestly, but he knows his stuff. Takes me camping every summer. Says it builds character. I just like the quiet. The interview went on for an hour. By the end, galactic policy had shifted. Humans were granted immediate level 9 diplomatic status, which was usually reserved for species with planet-destroying weapons. The reasoning was simple. Any species that evolved on Class 11, it'd consider Class 12 not that bad, probably shouldn't be provoked. Marcus collected his prize money, asked about the food court again, and wondered if they validated parking. Also, he said as an afterthought, does anyone know a good camping spot around here? I've got a long layover before my flight home, and I'd love to check out some alien wilderness. Anything Class 8 or below should be pretty tame, right? Vexlara's scales turned white. Please don't. Cool, I'll look it up myself. Thanks for the prize money. This was fun. As Marcus left, whistling a tune from Earth, the galaxy collectively decided that humans were welcome members of the cosmic community, as long as they stayed on their terrifying death world and only visited occasionally. And somewhere, Uncle Mike received a video message from Marcus saying, "You'll never believe what happened. Also, I found these cool purple berries. Want to try some when I get back?" The galaxy would never be the same.